Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Sciences by Tumi, Selane. Today is the 11th of November 2024 and it marks exactly 5 days before your final Life Sciences examination. I believe everybody's writing on Friday. Their Life Sciences Paper 1. I hope that you have been preparing, because I don't know whether to be nervous for you or to be excited for you. But hey, as long as you're prepared, then everything is going to go well. Okay, so remember to like, comment, subscribe, and if you found this video to be helpful in any way, to share it with a friend, to share it with a classmate, so that it might benefit them as well. My name is Tumi Selane, teacher from Milner High School, and on today's lesson, we are going to be looking at the human nervous system, and specifically we'll be looking at the introductory parts. So to break down today's lesson, we will be looking at what is the nervous system and the importance of the nervous system. Then we move on to impulse pathway, just in the introduction, and very key important terminology in terms of this topic. We will be looking at how the nervous system works in terms of responding to stimuli, how impulses move to the receptor organ, how the body generates impulses, the central nervous system, and we'll also be talking about the effector organ. And then we will be moving on to be looking at what are neurons. We will be looking at their position, structure, and functions of the sensory neuron, the interneuron, as well as the motor neuron. Okay, let's get right into it. So, first of all, the importance of the nervous system. All right, now, the nervous system, there are two main systems in our body that help us to be able to respond to the environment. Okay, the first one is the nervous system that we're busy with now, and all the videos involving the nervous system are on this particular playlist. Okay, so the nervous system does that by involving nerves. We'll talk about what nerves are in a moment. Secondly, it is the endocrine system. I've done videos on the endocrine system and homeostasis on the playlist that is titled The Nervous System and Homeostasis. So you can go have a look at those lessons over there. Okay, it is a separate playlist. So the nervous system involves nerves. We'll talk about what nerves are in a moment. And the endocrine system involves hormones, which are chemical signals or chemical messengers. These two are very important for us to be able to respond to the environment. Guys, as living organisms, it is very much important for us to be able to respond to the environment. The environment is a very dangerous place. Without our ability to respond to the environment, we will not be able to get things like food, we will not be able to get things like water. If you're feeling cold, you won't be able to get into a warm environment or wear warm clothes. If you aren't able to respond to the environment, you won't be able to survive, because you will not be able to respond to the thousands of dangerous situations that we find ourselves in a daily basis. Okay, if a car is approaching you, or if you're being chased by a pit bull, or if you are sleeping, for example. Let's say, for example, you are sleeping, the lights are out, you're in your room, you're in your bed, and all of a sudden you hear something slithering in your room, and you feel something scaly that is in your bed, and it's touching you. You know what I mean? It might be a snake. What do you respond by doing? You jump out of the way, you know? Or you're walking, a pit bull is approaching, I don't know. They say you're not supposed to run away, but instinct says run away. You run away. You get on top of a car, or you know what I mean. Or you are busy eating. You didn't know that the food is spoiled, and as soon as you put that food in your mouth, what do you react by doing? You can vomit. You can spit it out, or let's say, for example, you are just walking and you have your headsets on, and at the corner of your eye you see a bicycle approaching you, you know what I mean, and you immediately jump out of the way. Or I don't know, any other dangerous situation that we face on a daily basis warrants us to be able to respond. If we aren't able to respond to the environment, we will not be able to get the things that we need from the environment for us to be able to survive. Like I said, food, water, and if we aren't able to respond, we will not be able to avoid or evade danger from the environment, and we might get hurt. Worst case scenario, we will be prone to die. Okay, so the importance of the nervous system primarily is that we need to be able to respond to the environment in order for us to be able to survive. Okay, so to get the things that we need from the environment in terms of food, water, tools, and to be able to avoid danger. Okay, so if you're asked this question, how are you supposed to respond to it? So if you get a question like, what are the two main functions or significances of the nervous system? The first one, the first response is to be able to react to stimuli. We'll talk about what stimuli are just now. Okay, so to be able to react to stimuli in order to minimize harm to the environment. Okay, and I will show you the importance just now. So when you talk about a stimulus, what are we talking about? So the word stimuli is plural. One singular is stimulus. One stimulus, many stimuli. So when you talk about a stimulus, we are talking about any factor from the environment that causes the body to react. Okay? It is any factor, anything. You don't have to say factor. You can just simply say anything from the environment that causes the body to react or to respond in a certain way. Okay, I've already given you examples, but I'm going to give you more just now. So, stimuli may come from the outside environment, meaning outside of your body. These are the common stimuli that we know about. Okay, so if a stimulus or if a factor or if anything from the outside environment causes you to respond in a certain way, number one, it is a stimulus. Number two, because it comes out from outside of your body, we call it an external stimulus. Let's look at examples. Example number one is heat from a flame. So let's say, for example, there's a burning candle, and by mistake, you put your finger on that burning flame. You are most definitely going to react immediately. Why do you react immediately? To minimize harm to your body. So you minimize harm to your body. Okay, so reacting by jumping out of the way or removing your finger from that burning flame can save your finger. You might react by running to the tap and exposing that wound to water. You might scream, you might cry even, you know. So that is a reaction. And what caused you to react that way? It was the heat from the flame. So heat from the flame is a stimulus because it caused you to react in a certain way. I'm so sorry for the dogs, you guys. I don't know what's happening outside. Hopefully they will be quiet in a while. Okay, second example of an external stimulus is loud sound. Let's say, for example, you are crossing the road, you are walking and you are crossing the road. Unfortunately, you are fixated or you are focused on something, so you don't check if there are any cars approaching. And all of a sudden, you hear a loud beep signaling for you to run out of the way. Immediately when you hear that loud sound, you are going to do what? You are going to run out of the way to avoid being hit by the car. So that loud hooting sound, the loud sound, caused you to react in a certain way by running out of the road or running away from the car. That is a stimulus because it caused you to react in a certain way. Another example, bright light. Okay, let's say, for example, again, it's nighttime and you are driving and you are tired. And by mistake, you get onto the wrong lane and somebody puts on their bright indicator lights in order for you to signal to you that you're on the wrong lane. So immediately when you see that, you are going to react by steering your car into the right lane. Okay, so that bright flickering light caused you to react by turning the car and driving in the right lane. So because it caused you to react in a certain way, bright light is also a stimulus. And then I've already talked about the fast car approaching you. If you hear somebody hooting or you see a car approaching you, you immediately react by running away from the approaching vehicle. Okay, so that is a stimulus because it caused you to react in a certain way. So let's go back to the definition of a stimulus. We said a stimulus is anything, any factor from the environment that causes the body to react or to respond in a certain way. It can be absolutely anything. And if that stimulus comes from outside of your body, we call it an external stimulus. Okay. Now, stimuli are tied, because they come from outside the outside environment, they are tied to our sense organs. Remember, what are our 5 main senses? Seeing, hearing, tasting, touch, and smell. Okay, that's how we receive these stimuli into the body. We'll look at that later. Okay, so external stimuli arouse our senses. Okay, by using our receptor organs. Sometimes we call them sense organs: the eye, the ear, the nose, the skin, as well as the tongue for tasting. So this is how we receive these external stimuli from the outside environment. So we call these our sense organs. Stimulus, light, we receive it by our eyes, all right? And our eyes help us receive light as a stimulus so that we are able to see. Sound, we receive by our ears so that we are able to hear sound. Physical pressure, when somebody or something applies physical pressure on your skin or on your body, right? Your skin will receive that physical pressure, that stimulus, okay? And then chemicals on objects like food, okay? If you are eating something, maybe let's say something rotten, you are immediately going to spit it out because of those chemicals that are in that food. That is a stimulus. And chemicals on objects, are tied to our tongue, and then that's how we are able to taste. And if there are chemicals in the atmosphere or chemicals in the air, we receive by our nose, and that's how we are able to smell. So the five main stimuli that we use our receptor organs to be able to take into our body are light, sound, physical pressure, chemicals on objects, as well as chemicals in the air, and they arouse our senses. Seeing, hearing. Okay, if it's light, it arouses sight. If it's sound, it arouses seeing. If it's physical pressure, touch. If it's chemicals on objects, taste. And if it's chemicals in the atmosphere, then smell. Okay. Now, stimuli don't only come from the outside environment. There are other stimuli that are intrinsic, meaning they come from inside of your body. We usually don't think about them, but these are known as internal stimuli. So remember, a stimulus is anything that causes your body to react or to respond in a certain way. So if that thing is from inside of your body, we call it an internal stimuli or an internal stimulus. Sorry for that. What are some of the examples of internal stimuli? Examples include drop in blood water levels. When there's a drop in water levels of your blood, when there's a drop in blood water levels, usually you get feelings such as thirst. All right? What are you going to do? You are going to react by drinking water. So thirst was caused by a drop in water levels in your body, which caused you to react by drinking water. Or if you watched the video on the on the endocrine system, if there's a drop in blood water levels, then the pituitary gland will secrete more what? Which hormone? ADH, which makes the walls of the renal tubules to be more permeable to water, therefore increasing reabsorption of water and decreasing the loss of water through urination. That is a reaction. Therefore, when there's a drop in water levels, either consciously you are going to react by drinking water, or subconsciously your endocrine system will start secreting hormones to make sure that you don't lose a lot of water and you retain a lot of water. Okay, guys? So that is a reaction. So drop in water levels is definitely a stimulus. But because the stimulus is from inside of your body, we call it an internal stimulus. Sorry, I didn't see, I made a mistake there. It's supposed to be internal. Okay, another example, rise in blood glucose levels. After eating, digesting starch, glucose levels are going to go up in your body. Okay, and if you have too much glucose in your blood, again, if you watched the videos on the endocrine system, the reaction is that your pancreas will secrete more insulin, and that insulin will cause the excess or the extra glucose in the blood to be converted into glycogen and stored in the liver and muscle cells. Some of the glucose in the influence of insulin will be absorbed into your body cells, thereby reducing the blood glucose levels. That is a reaction. Okay, so the rise in blood glucose levels is definitely an internal stimulus. Another one, hunger. Okay, so when you're hungry, what do? You do what you can to be able to nourish your body, to be able to eat. Okay, so because hunger causes you to eat, That is a reaction. Therefore, hunger is a stimulus. And then lastly, emotions. Anger can cause people to shout, scream, cry. Happiness can cause people to jump, laugh. Other people cry when they are feeling happy. Because these emotions are causing you to react in a certain way, they are also stimuli. And because they come from inside of your body and not outside of your body, they are known as internal stimuli. Okay, guys? Right. Now, let's go back to where we were. We were describing the two main functions of the nervous system. First one, we said the nervous system helps us to react to stimuli in order to minimize harm to the body. Okay. The second importance of the nervous system is coordination. Coordination of the different activities of the body. Now, the word to coordinate means to make different parts of your body to work together. Okay, I'm going to make a very simple example. Right now, I am speaking to you. My speaking to you involves my tongue, my vocal cords, the muscles of my lower jaw to move up and down. Okay, I'm just going to mention these three parts of my body. Now, these three parts of my body work independently, meaning they do their specific functions, the functions that they are adapted to. Okay, but in working independently, they must work in a coordinated manner in order for me to be able to speak in the right tone, in the right pitch, and to be able to say the right thing so that you are able to understand me. If the tongue was doing its thing, my vocal cords are doing their thing, my lower jaw is doing its thing, and there's no coordination, there's no working together, I will not be able to speak, or I will produce sound, however, it will not make sense. Okay. Now, when you talk about coordination, the nervous system makes sure that the different parts of the body work in a coordinated manner, meaning they are working together for you to be able to do the function that you need to do at that particular time. Another example, walking. Walking. Walking involves the contraction and relaxation of your skeletal muscles, right? So your skeletal muscles, you have different types of skeletal muscles. For you to be able to walk, all these muscles must work together in a coordinated manner for you to be able to do the action of walking. Okay, so the nervous system helps for the different body parts to coordinate their functions so that you will be able to do whatever activity that you want to do at that particular time. Okay, so two main functions of the nervous system, and they are in your exam guidelines, guys. So you must know them. Firstly, it helps people to be able to react to environmental stimuli to minimize harm to the body. Secondly, it helps with coordination of the different activities of the body. If you're asked this, this would be 2 marks. If you're asked to mention them, this would be 2 marks. Okay, moving right along. Continuing with the nervous system. The nervous system is made up of a complex network of neurons. Okay? Neurons are what we call nerve cells. Nerve cells. We'll talk about neurons, the structure, and everything else later on in this lesson. Don't worry about that now. They are nerve cells. Sometimes they are referred to as the functional unit of the nervous system. Okay, so neurons that are in a network, okay, or in a bundle, pressed together, forms what we call nerves. Okay. Secondly, to make sure that signals or messages are transferred through these neurons well, we have the control organs, which are primarily the spinal cord and the brain. Don't worry, this will make sense very soon. Okay, so what neurons do, these are cells. Remember, the human body has different types of cells. Okay, we have blood cells, bone cells, muscle cells. They perform different functions. So here we have nerve cells, specialized cells called nerve cells, scientifically known as neurons. Okay, so they are packaged in bundles, pressed together to form what we call nerves. And what these neurons do, they transmit electrical signals or electrical messages to and from the control centers. And the control centers for these signals or for these electrical messages that move through neurons are the spinal cord and the brain. We'll talk about that just now, don't worry. If you're confused now, it's okay. We'll talk about it just now. Okay. Now, when we look at the nervous system, like we said, we have what we call nerves. The nerves are highlighted on that picture as blue. As you can see, the nerves travel all around the body. Okay? What nerves do is that they take electrical signals or electrical messages from the body. It can be from your toes, your eyes, your fingers, your heart, or whatever. They travel throughout the body. And as you can see, they are a network. Okay? So what they do, they take messages from the body to the spinal cord, and most of them from the spinal cord to the brain. And the brain will send more signals or more messages from itself to the spinal cord to the body. So these electrical signals or electrical messages travel from the body, primarily from receptor organs, to the spinal cord, to the brain. And there are other signals that are taken from the brain down the spinal cord to your body. Okay. So, like we said, nerves are one component of the nervous system, and we have two control centers, which are the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, let's look at this picture, this model on the right-hand side. Like we said, the brain is the control center for all these messages or all these electrical signals. And then the brain will send these signals to the spinal cord, and then the spinal cord will take these signals to the body through the different nerves. All right, let's check this video quite very quickly. As you can see, we have a network. As you can see, we have a network of these cells. All of these cells are known as neurons. And as you can see, they are a messed up network. Like I said, they transport or transmit electrical signals or electrical messages from the body to the brain, from the brain to the body, in the form of these nerves. As you can see, the electrical messages are moving from the brain. Let me just go back. As you can see, these electrical signals are transported from the brain to the spinal cord. They go down the spinal cord, and then these signals will be transmitted to the rest of the body. So here, where I'm making an asterisk is the nerves. Okay? They are transmitting electrical signals from the brain to the body and from the body to the brain. In the neuron, as you can see over there, there are the electrical signals that are transported from one neuron to the next neuron to the following one, and it goes on and on and on and on and on like that. Okay, guys, don't worry. Like I said, if you're feeling confused, this will make better sense very, very soon. Okay, so the nervous system, guys, is divided into two main parts. We have what we call the CNS, which is the central nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. Why is it called the central nervous system? I have no idea, but from my intelligent guess, I would think that because the brain, look at the position of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain and the spinal cord are in the central axis of the body. Okay, so because they are in the center of the body, the central axis of the body, hence it is called the central nervous system. So the central nervous system involves the brain and the spinal cord. All right. Any other nerves besides those of the brain and the spinal cord are known as the PNS. Okay, the PNS is known as the peripheral nervous system. Periphery means side, right? It means on the side, outside of something. So the peripheral nervous system includes all these other nerves. It can be the nerves on your arm, it can be the nerves on your legs, it can be the nerves on your chest. All these other nerves that are outside of the brain and the spinal cord are known as the peripheral nervous system. Okay, the two that you must know about are the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Okay, cranial nerves, remember, comes from the word cranium, which is a bone that protects the cerebrum of your brain. It is the bone that protects the bone that protects the brain, the cranial nerve. It is not part of the brain. It is on the cranium. Okay? So it is outside of the brain, so it forms part of the peripheral nervous system. The spinal nerves take impulses from the body into the spinal cord. Okay, we are going to talk about the spinal nerves later on, but for now, just know that the spinal nerves take impulses from the body into the spinal cord. They are not part of the spinal cord. They are just connected to the spinal cord. So they are outside of the spinal cord. So they are not part of the central nervous system. Remember, the central nervous system is specifically the brain and the spinal cord. There are nerves that are connected to the brain and the spinal cord, but they're outside of the brain and spinal cord. What they do is that they take signals from the body to the brain and the spinal cord. All right? Now, those that take impulses anywhere in your face, meaning from your eyes to your brain, from your nose to your brain, from your tongue to your brain, and so on, so on, so on, um, ultimately are going to connect to the cranial nerve. So the cranial nerve takes messages from the face area to your brain. All right? So it is connected to the brain, it does not form part of the brain. And then the spinal nerves, on the other hand, take messages or signals from the body, the lower body, to the spinal cord. Okay, so like I said, there are two main divisions of the nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain, and the spinal cord. These are the two main organs of the central nervous system. Okay, and all other nerves that are outside of your brain and spinal cord, they're in the periphery. These are known, these nerves form part of the peripheral nervous system. There are many of them, guys. There are many of them, but two that are prescribed for you to know are the spinal nerves. We'll talk about the spinal nerves later, and the cranial nerves. Cranial nerves take impulses anywhere in your face area to your brain. Spinal nerves take impulses or signals from your lower body, okay, into the spinal cord. Hence, it is called the spinal nerves. So, we've been talking about all these signals, messages. What is the scientific term to refer to these signals? This is known as an impulse. It is a very important term for you to know. So when you talk about an impulse, we are talking about an electrical signal or an electrical message that travels throughout the body via the nervous system to transmit information from one part of the body to the next part of the body. So these are signals, or these are messages that are taken from one part of your body to the next part of your body. And they are electrical in form. Okay. Remember earlier on when we were talking about stimuli, we said that when you touch a burning flame, you immediately react by lifting your arm. Okay? But there is a whole process that took place for you to be able to react in that way. Meaning, from the receptor, from your finger, the pain was, or the heat was received. It was sent from your finger, it was sent to your spinal cord to be interpreted, and another message was sent to your skeletal muscles for you to be able to jump out of the way. And it happened immediately. Okay. Now, a message was taken from your finger to your spinal cord, and your spinal cord interpreted that as, hey, this is very dangerous. Something must be done. And then a message was taken to your skeletal muscles for you to be able to lift your finger from that flame, or for you to jump out of the way. Okay? So this traveling of this messaging system that travels throughout your nervous system, from your finger to your spinal cord, from your spinal cord to your skeletal muscles. This messaging must travel very quickly. And what better way to transmit this message or this information but by electricity? Electricity, guys, travels very quick. It is one of the fastest entities in our universe that travels. Okay, so because electricity travels so quickly, from taking a message from your finger to your spinal cord and taking another message from the spinal cord to your skeletal muscles for you to lift your finger from the flame, it needs to travel super quick to minimize damage to your finger. Okay, so this message or this signal is called an impulse, and it travels through your nervous system. So impulses are messages that are, or signals that travels throughout your body via the nervous system, and they transmit information from one part of the body to the next part of the body. So from now on, I'm not going to be saying that signals move through your nerves. I'm going to be saying impulses move through your nerves. These electrical messages that transfer information from one part of your body to the next part of your body. All right. So as you can see over there, that is a network of neurons. And as you can see, there are impulses or signals that are moving from one neuron to the next neuron to the next neuron through the nervous system. So this burst of light that is animated there is actually impulses that are moving, or it is actually signals that are moving from one part of the body to the next. And okay, let me just go back. So sorry for that. Guys, what's happening to my presentation now? Okay. So like I was saying, so this transmission of electrical messages from one neuron to the next neuron to the next neuron moves messages or moves signals or moves information from one part of the body to the next part of the body, as indicated by this animation over here. All right. Now, second part of the lesson, guys, is the impulse pathway. Impulse pathway, we mean how the impulses move from one part of your body to the next part of your body, or how these signals or messages move from one part of the body to the next part of the body. Okay, so that is what we are going to describe next. So this is a general overview of how the nervous system works. General overview. On the next video, we are specifically going to be looking at the reflex arc and how into detail how this happens. But for now, because this is an introduction, we are going to be looking at the general overview of how your nervous system works. All right. So firstly, let's say, for example, you see a ball. You're playing soccer and somebody kicks the ball to you. What is going to be the instant reaction? You are going to want to block the ball, dribble, maybe, and kick it to somebody else. Okay, so the ball is a stimulus because it causes you to be able to make the necessary adjustments to your body to block it and kick it. Am I right? So the ball is a stimulus because it causes a reaction of the football player. Now, how do you receive the stimulus? You receive the stimulus by seeing that the ball is coming towards your direction, so your eyes will receive the stimulus. Okay, and again, messages or impulses must be taken to your brain, right? For you to be able to do what? For you to be able to process, think, and interpret your reaction. And your brain will send impulses or messages to your legs, muscles of your legs, for you to be able to do what? To kick the ball in the correct direction or maybe score a goal. Okay, now what do we call the ball? The ball we call a stimulus. What did we say a stimulus is again? Stimulus, we said, is any factor from the environment that causes the body to react. 2 marks for that. So in this scenario, the ball is a stimulus. Why? Because it causes you to react in a certain way. Okay. What are the eyes? What do we call the eyes? The eyes are receptor organs. Now listen to this terminology. A receptor organ. So what does it receive? It receives a stimulus. Okay? The stimulus comes from outside of your body. Okay? Now, how does the stimulus get into your body? Or the perception of the stimulus get into your body? It gets into your body by receptor organs. Okay, so if it's something that has to deal with seeing, it will be received by the eyes. If it's sound, the receptor organ will be the ear. If it's physical touch, the receptor organ will be the skin. Okay, if it has something to do with tasting, the receptor organ would be the tongue. So a receptor organ, what is a receptor organ? A receptor organ is an organ of the body. It has two jobs, and it's very important for you to know this. It receives a stimulus, okay? A stimulus coming from the outside environment, the ball in this case. If it's a loud sound, then the receptor organ would be the ear. If it's heat, it would be the skin. If it has something to do with taste, then it would be the tongue, or smell, it would be the nose. So the receptor organ, what it does is that it receives the stimulus, meaning it takes the stimulus into your body, or the perception of the stimulus into your body. Second function, it converts the stimulus into an impulse. Okay, it converts it into an impulse. Guys, stimuli do not travel. Excuse me for that. Stimuli do not travel throughout your body. Think about heat. When you touch a burning flame, heat cannot travel from your finger to your spinal cord, to your brain. Heat cannot travel through your body. Otherwise, it's going to burn that pathway from your finger to your spinal cord to your brain. You are going to be fried. Okay. But what the body does is that it will receive the stimulus, which is heat, and convert that into a message called an impulse that travels from your finger to your spinal cord, from your spinal cord to your muscles for you to lift your finger out of that hot plate. Same in this situation. Okay, the ball does not become absorbed by your body and travel to your spinal cord, to your brain. That is impossible. Okay, so what your eyes will do, your eyes will receive the necessary light frequencies, not frequencies, sorry, wavelengths. It will receive the stimulus, the perception of the ball. It will convert that into an impulse, an electrical signal or electrical message. That message will travel to the central nervous system, okay? Either the brain or the spinal cord, okay? So most impulses travel from the receptor organ to the brain. Spinal cord first to your brain. So what happens at the central nervous system, either the spinal cord or the brain, what's going to happen is that there is going to be interpretation, perception. Okay, the brain will receive the information that, hey, the eyes saw a ball coming towards my direction. Therefore, I must send a message to the foot and other muscles for this person to block the ball, dribble, and kick it to the other player. So that's where interpretation of the impulse happens. Let's go back, you guys. Stimulus, we said, is anything from the environment that causes a reaction. In this case, our stimulus is the ball. Stimulus received by a receptor organ. Receptor organ has two jobs. Firstly, receives the stimulus. Secondly, converts that stimulus into an impulse. That impulse is sent to the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord, right? So the brain and the spinal cord, that's where interpretation is going to happen. Okay, the brain will, or the spinal cord, or both, will interpret that, okay, I've received this message. Now, I must send a message to the relevant body parts to react in a certain way. Okay? So the function of the central nervous system in this case is to interpret impulses from the receptor. And then, after interpretation, the brain will send another impulse to the effector organ. Okay? Now, what is the effector organ? The effector organ, point number 4, is any muscle or any gland of the body. What does it do? These are muscles or glands that react. There's a mistake there, you guys. React. React to a stimulus. Okay, so in this case, the effector will be the muscles, skeletal muscles of the foot, the legs, or the thighs. Okay, so from the brain, an impulse will be sent to the effector organ to tell the effector organ to be able to respond in a certain way. Okay, you guys? Now, remember we said that impulses, these electrical impulses, travel through specialized cells called neurons. Okay? Now, how do impulses move from the receptor to the central nervous system? They move through neurons called sensory neurons. Okay, so the sensory neurons are positioned between the receptor organ and the central nervous system. So what they do is that they take impulses from the receptor organs to the central nervous system. Okay, now from the central nervous system, we said that's where interpretation is going to happen. Okay, and then the central nervous system will send another impulse to the effector organ. The effector organ is the muscle or the gland that reacts. Okay, so the brain will send an impulse to tell the effector to react in a certain way. But how does it get how does the impulse move from the central nervous system to the relevant effector organ? It moves through a neuron called the motor neuron. Okay, so the motor neuron takes impulses of interpretation, from the central nervous system to the relevant effector organ. Okay, so an overview of how the nervous system works, like I said: 1, stimulus. 2, the stimulus is received by a receptor organ, and the receptor organ will convert that stimulus into an impulse. 3, the impulse is taken to the brain or spinal cord to be interpreted. And how does the impulse get there? So from the receptor, we no longer have a stimulus, but we have an impulse. It is sent to the brain and spinal cord, where it is going to be interpreted. The brain and spinal cord will send another impulse for the effector organ to tell the effector organ to react in a certain way. And the impulse of reaction is taken to the effector organ by the motor neuron. Okay, so the first impulse is a sensory impulse. Sensory impulse. It is taken from the sensory organ to the central nervous system. The second impulse is a reaction impulse. So here, the brain or the spinal cord is telling the effector organ to react in a certain way, and that impulse is taken by the motor neuron. So the motor neuron is placed between the central nervous system and the effector organ. So, functions. The sensory neuron transmits impulses from the receptor organ to the brain or spinal cord. So it is positioned between the sensory or the receptor organ and the central nervous system. Its function is to transmit impulses from the receptor organ to the central nervous system. Our second neuron that we made note of here is the motor neuron. The motor neuron transmits impulses from the brain or spinal cord to the effector organ to tell the effector organ to react in a certain way. We have a third neuron, but we'll talk about it in this coming slide. So, the neurons. Let's talk about the neurons. We have 3 types of neurons. But what are neurons to begin with? Neurons are specialized nerve cells. Remember, I said we have different types of cells in the body. Blood cells, bone cells, muscle cells, all different types. But neurons are specialized nerve cells. Their job is to transmit electrical impulses throughout the body. So what they are is they are specialized nerve cells, and what they do is to transmit. Transmit, guys, it's just a fancy word meaning transport. Okay. So sorry for that. It just to transport or to move the impulse. Okay. So what neurons are, they are specialized nerve cells, and what they do is that they transmit electrical impulses throughout the body. So impulses specifically move through neurons. Okay, remember, impulses move specifically through neurons, not blood cells, not any other cells, neurons. Okay, so neurons, because they transmit impulses, they're otherwise known as functional units of the nervous system. They're functional units of the nervous system. So I'm going to play a video again. So as you can see, this is a nerve, meaning a bundle of neurons. Each one of these structures that you see there are neurons. And what neurons do, like we said, is they transmit electrical impulses. As you can see over there, impulses are moving from one neuron, that is one neuron, going down, and the impulse is sent to another branch of another neuron. So the function of neurons is to transmit electrical impulses from one part of the body to the next part of the body. And remember what impulses are. They are electrical signals or electrical messages that transmit information, important information, from one part of the body to the next. Okay, so the types, location, and functions of neurons. We have 3 types of neurons. Something very important to remember, again, is that I am emphasizing again that all neurons transmit impulses, transmit or transport or allow impulses to move through them. Okay, so the function of all 3 types of neurons is to transport impulses, these electrical messages. That's what they do. But they are positioned in different parts of your body. That's what gives them their specific functions. Okay, so the first type of neuron is the sensory neuron. Okay, where did we say we find the sensory neuron again? Just remember from the previous slides, where do we find the neuron? The sensory neuron. The sensory neuron is found between the receptor organ and the central nervous system. That's the position between the receptor organ and the central nervous system. Okay, now its function, it transmits impulses from the sensory neuron. Not sensory neuron, from the receptor organ. There we go. So sorry for that mistake. From the receptor organ to the central nervous system. So from your eyes to your central nervous system. From your ears to your central nervous system. From your tongue, central nervous system. From your muscles, central nervous system. From your skin, central nervous system. That's what the sensory neuron does. So you must know the position and the function. Our second type of neuron that we looked at was the motor neuron. Where did we say we find the motor neuron again? We said we find the motor neuron between the central nervous system and the effector organ. Remember, the effector organ is that part of the body that responds. And usually that is a specific gland or it is a muscle for you to be able to move out of the way. Okay, now, because of this position, what is the function of the motor neuron? So the motor neuron transmits impulses from the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, to the effector organ. So by virtue of us getting the motor neuron between the central nervous system and the effector organ, we get this function to transmit impulses from the central nervous system to the effector organ to bring about a reaction. Okay, now there is another neuron that we haven't spoken about. This neuron is inside the central nervous system, meaning it forms part of the spinal cord and the brain. This is known as the interneuron. Now, this prefix inter means between. or in the middle. Inter means between. Okay, so the interneuron is like an adapter between the two neurons, the sensory neurons and the motor neurons. Remember, the sensory neuron is found, connects the the receptor organ to the central nervous system. Inside the central nervous system, so let's say this is the sensory neuron. So here it will be the receptor organ, right? And here it will be the central nervous system. So impulses move from the receptor organ to the central nervous system by the sensory neuron. Okay, inside the sensory neuron, we have the interneuron. So inside the spinal cord and the brain, where interpretation happens, and from there we have another neuron called the motor neuron. Okay, so the motor neuron is connected from the one side central nervous system to the other side is the effector organ. So it takes impulses from the central nervous system to the effector neuron, that is the motor neuron. But look at the position of the interneuron. The interneuron is between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron, okay, which is inside the central nervous system. So it is position. It is found inside the spinal cord and brain. So inside the central nervous system, what does it do? Transmits impulses from the sensory neuron, from here, the sensory neuron, to the motor neuron from there. So like I said, it's like an adapter. Sensory neuron takes impulses from the receptor organ to the central nervous system. The impulses move from the sensory neuron to the interneuron before it moves to the motor neuron, then the effector. Okay, guys? So you must know the position of each and the subsequent function of each. Must know this, guys. Very important. So, to bring all of this into perspective, let's go back and revise. A person accidentally pricks himself on this nail. What would he react by doing? He will react by lifting his finger from the nail. Okay, so action, mistakenly applying pressure on the sharp nail. Reaction, lifting the finger. Okay, so how does this action lead to this reaction? Let's revise. Okay, so we said firstly there must be a stimulus. What is the stimulus in this case? The stimulus is the nail. Okay. The stimulus is received by which part? Remember, the part that receives the stimulus and converts it into an impulse is called the receptor organ. Okay. Like we said, the receptor organ inside would have receptor cells that receive the stimulus and convert it into an impulse. In this case, our receptor organ is the skin. Right. Now, we said that the receptor receives the stimulus and converts that stimulus into an impulse. Now, going forward is the impulse, the electrical signal, not not the stimulus. Okay. Now, this stimulus is supposed to be taken to the brain and the spinal cord for what? For interpretation. So to the central nervous system. Okay. By what? By the sensory neuron. So the impulse is taken to the central nervous system by the interneuron. Look at the position of the interneuron. Remember, the arrows are showing the direction of flow of the impulse. So the impulse is taken from the receptor to the central nervous system via this guy, the sensory neuron. In the sensory neuron, like we said, what happens? Interpretation happens there. So a message, the impulse that is taken to the central nervous system is the receptor impulse. Sorry for that. Receptor impulse. So basically, the skin is saying, hey, there's a pointy object, there's a sharp object that the finger is applying pressure on. This impulse or this message is taken to the brain and the spinal cord by the sensory neuron. Okay, so in the sensory neuron, remember we said we find the interneuron. So the interpretation will happen in the brain or spinal cord to say, hey, that is very dangerous. I have to tell the muscles of the finger to lift the finger from that pointy object. Otherwise, there is going to be serious harm to that finger. So that message of reaction will be taken to the effector organ by the motor neuron. Okay, so the motor neuron sends an impulse to the effector organ, the effector organ being the muscles of the hand. It sends a message that is called a reaction impulse to tell the muscles of the hand, being the effector organs, to lift or to move that finger away from the dangerous stimulus. Okay, so the position and the functions of the neurons are very important. Okay, look at where the sensory neuron is. Sensory neuron is between the receptor organ and the central nervous system. It sends the receptor impulse from the receptor organ to the central nervous system. The position of the motor neuron is between the central nervous system and the effector organ. What it does is that it sends the reaction impulse to tell the effector to react in a certain way from the central nervous system to the effector organ. And where do we find the interneuron? We find the interneuron in the central nervous system, meaning it is there in the spinal cord and it leads to the brain and back. Okay, you guys, moving right along.